Hiring doesn't have to be confusing. In fact, it's quite simple if you follow the right steps. And so in this video, I want to show you the exact framework that we are using inside of our capital raising business to consistently get results. Hey guys, my name is Ellis, Hammond. I'm the Vice President of Capital here at Aspen Funds. And we have raised over almost $300 million of retail investor capital and on our path to $1 billion. And so I make this video for other fund managers, capital raisers, sponsors who are looking to grow and scale their capital raising business in the hopes that maybe one day we can work together. We have a fund manager program. And if you're interested, go to aspenfunds.us/fund manager to learn what it might look like to work with us. But here's what I want to do in this video, because I also realize that I talk to a lot of folks, and this video is both for someone who is trying to hire their first person, but maybe also for someone who's past that and trying now to hire folks like marketing roles, hire sales roles. What I have found, and just to give you a little bit of experience, I've built multiple businesses now. I've had sales teams, I've had marketing teams, I've had investor relations teams. And so I've done this wrong for a long time. And I feel like after doing this wrong and, I would say inefficiently hiring and spending money on employees that didn't get results, I've learned a lot on what to do now and really being able to kind of come into Aspen and grow and scale in a predictable fashion. And so that's what I want to share with you in this video, is just our framework and kind of how I think about hiring people. And so this is the problem that I see most of the time, is that most people wait too long to hire, or it's one or two problems. So they wait too long to hire, or they hire too soon without clarity. Okay. And so those are the two things that I want to work through today, because when you leave here, when you finish watching this video, or if you listen to the podcast, this audio, I want you to leave here and hire the right person immediately. I want you to feel confident that you can go hire this person right away and have very clear expectations and know that they're going to succeed after you hire them. And so the first hire, if you're on your first hire, this is almost always going to be a generalist. Okay. And this is everything I'm going to share with this video. Is what I'm going to share now only applies for this person. Okay. So this is very key, that the first hire and second hire are totally different. So if you're on your first hire, this is almost always a task-oriented VA. And the purpose of this hire is to free up your time from non-revenue generating tasks, right? So that could be checking your inbox. That could be doing, expense reports. That could be, if you're editing, videos, it could even be, posting your own content or editing podcast, or, there's just so many things, right, that you do that you probably don't even know you do. And this person is the only person for a long time that is not going to be hired for KPIs, key performance indicators. They're hired for simplicity and leverage. Okay. So scheduling your meetings or other ideas, research, anything admin. And this is so key for this is your first hire. And the best way to know what this person does, I remember the first time I did this, I was like, man, I don't even know all that I'm doing. And so literally for an entire, I think it was 2 weeks, I just opened up an Excel spreadsheet. And every time I was working on something, I just wrote it down. Here's what I'm doing. And then that way, whenever I did that and I brought in this general VA, I knew exactly what to train them on. Hey, here are all the things that I'm doing that I need you to get up to speed on. And man, that probably freed up for me 20 hours a week. It was unbelievable. And so if you're hiring your first person, that is the first person, is a task-oriented kind of general VA. And the goal is to free up your time. Okay. And so this is, you can go on Upwork or onlinejobs.ph. You can hire a great VA, a general VA, for anywhere from $6 on the low end to $12 on the high end, can get you someone that's that works very hard, that will commit to you for 40 to 50 hours a week, is very detail oriented. And I would highly recommend, if you don't have that person in your business, to go hire that immediately. Okay. So for everyone after that, the hiring model after a general VA, and this is where a lot of folks listening to these podcasts are, is, okay, now I'm looking to potentially grow and scale my investor relations team, or I'm looking to grow and scale my marketing team. What do you need to do? Because remember, the second mistake for the most part that I see is people hiring too fast without clarity. And so what I want to do is give you the clarity and the framework that we use for everyone in our organization, okay, that we're hiring from now until, maybe there's another generalist role, but for the most part, this is the hiring model that we use. And here is kind of the principle to note when you hire, is that you only hire if you know the key performance indicator, the main KPI and activity that drives revenue. And this is so important. And I've just learned this over the years, is that, It's so beneficial for you and for the person that you're hiring that you determine what success looks like. And that's so key, because it's important for you as the manager or the boss or the owner when you're trying to give evaluation of this person 3 months, 6 months in. Are they doing a good job? Right. And it's important for them. I have found across multiple hires, it gives them more purpose. And so and we'll talk about building a scoreboard later, but having a clear scoreboard, even for people who are not competitive, is actually beneficial to them. It's serving to them because they know if they're adding value to their organization, they know where they stand in your organization. And I feel that it gives people kind of peace and certainty about their position, especially for new people, when they're trying to, if you haven't been an employee in a long time, then you forget kind of what it feels like. Am I doing a good job? Am I going to keep my job? Right? Like, this is important for people. And so knowing where they stand is so key. And so that's the first thing, is that we wanted to determine what is the key performance indicator and the main activity that this person is being hired to do. And so let's go through kind of how to figure out what that is before you're hiring this. And so we'll take, for example, if you're doing sales calls or you are the investor relations person for your capital raising business, the best thing to do right now is start tracking your own data. And so, if you're a solopreneur, you're kind of doing everything. You're probably doing everything from front end marketing to closing. And so, like right now, start tracking your activity. What are you doing? Because there's probably two roles in this. There's probably marketing and there's investor relations. And so if you're doing messages on LinkedIn or post on LinkedIn, how many of those does it take to actually, get someone on the phone? And then what I would be tracking is how many calls does it take on average to close one investor? How many follow-ups does it take to get that person to invest with you? What is the average timeline from initial phone call to close deal? So I just gave you 3 KPIs that you can track right there. What were they? They were, number of calls, number of new calls, number of follow-up calls, in the average time from first call to close. And now you actually already have the 3 things that you can use for your investor relations person. Now, if you want this person to also be generating leads, then that's going to be key too. You have to know. So if you don't have good lead flow, then you need someone who can help maybe generate those leads. So what is that? Is that direct messages? Is that direct calls? Right? What are you doing, and how often? What are the key performance indicators that you are doing that drive those calls for you? And so that's going to be really important that you establish those benchmarks, that you have clear conversion rates in time to close cycles. And now that we have that, we can begin to bring people on. Okay. So if you have that checklist, again, to recap, if you don't know what those are, just track your own activity, right? Pull up a spreadsheet. Starting today, you could probably go back and look at your activity, but also going forward. And now you start to have clear benchmarks. Second, building the scoreboard. Okay. So we follow a model called EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. There's a book called Traction. And this is such a great book. I'd highly recommend it. But let me just kind of summarize it to save you a lot of time too, is that the scoreboard is so important because every person owns a number. Every person has a clear number. And so I'll give you exactly what it is for our investor relations I would call our investor relations associate or junior investor relations manager. His goal every week is 20 meetings held every single week. That's it. Especially, and here's my recommendation when hiring early, it can be, you may want to have a lot of numbers, but my recommendation is have very little, right? Try and have 1, 2, 3 at the most. And so his main number that he looks at every single week, that we look at every single week to know if he's on track, is how many meetings did you hold? And the goal is 20, right? And so that is a very clear number that he knows if he's, on target or not. Because I know if this person is holding 20 meetings a week on average, that is going to eventually lead to the result that we want, which is funded dollars. And then what we do is every single week on Mondays, we have something called an L10, which is part of the EOS system, and we check in on KPIs. In fact, we actually do this daily. We do this daily for 5 minutes in the morning. What were we follow a very simple meeting cadence in the morning. There's 4 things. What were your successes from yesterday? what were your key numbers from yesterday? What's your focus today? And is there anything that you're stuck on? And then, so they will report their numbers there. We like that cadence because, again, it keeps people on track. If they're off track and you're the manager, it helps you get them back on track. And then every single week we dive into their numbers. Are they on or off track? And if they're off track for multiple weeks, we talk about why. But for the most part, if you get a clear number, you'll find that they're not off track. They're typically on track. And so that's what we do. Weekly check on KPIs. And then every quarter we determine if that's a good KPI moving forward, or if we should change that number. Should we increase it? Should we lower it? Should we change it altogether? And so that way you're doing something daily, you're checking in, you're doing something weekly to review, and every quarter you're updating that number and determining if you need to change it. And then I would not try and change it within the quarter unless it needs to be. Typically you need to increase activity and not change the goal. So that's going to be really important. Okay, we're almost done here, but there's one last thing I want to share when you're hiring and thinking about hiring is hire for specialization, not generalization. So specialists always outperform generalists. And I hear this advice sometimes is try and hire for 80% of your results. And I really just don't like that. I don't necessarily always agree. If you can find someone who does it 80% as good as you do, then you should be satisfied with that. And I guess in some cases, maybe that makes sense, but think about it. If you're the owner, you're doing all kind of stuff, right? Especially as a solopreneur, you're doing a lot of things. So the likelihood that you're doing anything exceptionally well is often rare, in my opinion. However, if you can hire someone who's just focused on speaking to investors and closing deals and building rapport, do you think they should be better or worse than you in this role? In my opinion, they should be a heck of a lot better than me if all they're thinking about is investor relations, where I'm thinking about finding deals and marketing and finances and making sure we have enough money to run the business, right? And so that is why when I think about hiring, I want to make sure this person is coming in and they have a clear lane of what to do, meaning I'm hiring for specialization, not generalization, okay? And so, when you think about sales, think about closers versus lead generators, meaning on our team, we have someone who's full-time just calling and setting appointments. This person is not who the investor is going to speak with in detail to actually invest money with us. So their KPI is how many calls did they make and how many appointments did they set? And then our closers or our investor relationship managers, their KPI is much different. It's how many meetings did they hold, right? And what is the timeline from the what is their timeline from someone commits to when that deal closes? Meaning there's a follow-up process to that. When it comes to marketing, we have you can bifurcate this from content to acquisition, right? Even inside of our investor relations, we actually have distinguished our roles between someone who's focused on new investors, meaning all of the new leads we have coming in, to someone who's just focused on working with our fund managers, to someone who's just focused on working with our existing clients. And so even thinking inside of these departments is super helpful, because someone who's just focused on new deals, right? Like that's a mindset. That's a different activity typically than someone who's working with folks who've been with us for several years, because that's often much more of a nurturing process. It's kind of more of an advising process, right? And so this is very different activity. And so even thinking, specialization inside of a role can be very, very beneficial. All right. So again, a couple of things to take away here. Don't hire until you're clear on the role's core metric and activity. If you're on your first hire, it's probably important that you hire some type of generalist VA, and, having a clear KPI for that person can be a little bit harder because they're doing a lot of things. So I'm not really feeling for my assistant that she has a KPI, except that, make my life easier. And then after that, if you're listening to this video, make sure you have a clear activity and a clear KPI for that person. If you don't know what that is, look at what you're doing right now that's generating revenue for you and go hire that out first so that you can go focus on higher generating activities, hire focus specialists based on what you already know works, and give your team confidence through structure, clarity, and clear KPIs. Hey, I'd love to know what you thought about this video or this podcast. If you're listening to this, leave us a comment, or if you're listening to this, make sure you screenshot and share this somewhere online. Again, if you're interested in working with us as a fund manager and actually raising money alongside of Aspen Funds, go to aspenfunds.us/fund manager And if you are someone who can raise over $1 million and you're looking to expand your offerings inside of real estate, we're doing things like private credit, which is income focused. We have opportunities in the industrial space and also oil and gas. And so if you're looking for opportunities like that to grow and scale your capital raising business alongside a trusted partner, we love to connect with you. AspenFunds.us/fund manager. Thanks.